Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, where it's my absolute delight to be joined today on the show by multi-award-winning author Samantha Evans Schreider, who specializes in articulating grief and loss, leading grievers towards hope and healing. Her 20-plus years of leadership experience and contribution to over 30 books enable her to serve others, speaking truth with transparency, humor, and love. Welcome.
Me on this. Thank you, Kim, so much for having me on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Sam, and I'm so looking forward to this conversation because it's such a tricky topic, isn't it? Grief. It's one of the things that we all have. We all have those moments where we experience it, but we don't always know how to talk about it, and we don't always know how to help people through it, do we?
No, not at all. And I think before I experienced different types of grief, I didn't understand what people were going through. So experiencing my own grief absolutely helped me to understand how to talk to other people and how to relate to them. And then I feel like I also have, I don't know if I would call it a talent, but the ability to articulate grief and loss in a way that a lot of people cannot. So I've been able to lend people words when they don't have the words themselves.
That's amazing. And it really is a gift, because that is one of the big challenges, is we don't quite know how to articulate it until we've been through it ourselves. And even then it's sometimes tricky to articulate what it is that we're going through. But you've had quite a journey, haven't you? So before we get into the books, do you want to bring your journey to life a little bit for us?
Yeah, absolutely. And my ring light is distracting me a little bit, so I might end up taking my glasses off. I'm trying to duck down. Yeah, that's too much. I'm just gonna, I know where the computer is, or the screen, the camera. It'll be great. Sorry. Yeah. So my journey with grief, I experienced some different types of grief. I lost a friend in Iraq who was killed in a helicopter accident. He was a friend that I'd grown up with, and we went to church together as kids. So his death came really hard to me. I experienced the loss of grandparents, but I think the most impactful loss at first happened when I experienced back-to-back miscarriages at the beginning of my marriage. I had no idea that pregnancy ended in miscarriage at all. And I mean, I knew the word, I knew the vocabulary word miscarriage, but it was this foreign concept. And all I knew is that people got pregnant and then they had babies. That was it. That was how it worked. So when I experienced my first miscarriage, it came as a huge shock to me. And I was like, why don't other women talk about this? Why is no one talking about this huge loss? How do they not talk about it, right? Because it's a big deal. And I went online to look for books about infant loss. And I saw a lot of things that were saying 15 years ago I had a miscarriage, 10 years ago I had a miscarriage. Selfishly, I wanted someone to go through it with me. I felt like 15 years out, 10 years out, women would have known how their stories ended. They would have known whether or not they had kids. They would have been able to overcome their grief a little bit, and possibly even their view of the miscarriages 10 or 15 years prior would have been diluted in some ways. So I started writing a book. I had been journaling, and I turned my journal into love letters to miscarriage moms, which was written in the midst of my grief so that other moms would not be alone in theirs. And I invited other friends to collaborate with me and share their stories. So the book has input from over 40 moms and dads about different types of infant loss, stillbirth, early infant loss, infertility, adoption, things like that. So it's been a really powerful tool to help other women and other families go through their own infant loss.
Amazing. And I know from my own experience that nothing quite prepares you for it. Nothing quite prepares you for that moment when the pregnancy doesn't end with the child. And you're right, we don't talk about it. It's not spoken about. And in that moment, you are. Well, I think for me, I was bereft, and I didn't quite know what to do or where to go with that. And I had such harsh self-judgment on myself and what I believed I'd done wrong, even though I'd done nothing wrong.
Everyone did. I did the same thing, right? I mean, I was like, maybe that box was too heavy. Maybe I worked out too hard. Maybe I ate the wrong thing. And I absolutely blamed myself or looked for ways to blame myself. Yeah, I think that's absolutely normal.
Yeah. But at the time, you kind of know that now, having spoken to other people that have gone through it. But at the time, you were kind of like stuck in that loss, in that just not knowing how to really deal with it, and feeling so very guilty for everybody else that was involved, for the father, for the grandparents, and everybody else, because it was my body that failed. It was my body that didn't do what it was supposed to do, and that isn't the case, but it's what you tell yourself, isn't it, in those moments?
Yeah. And I was embarrassed because I'd announced it to friends and family and posted the pregnancy announcement on Facebook and social media. And so I felt like not just friends and family, but I felt like I was letting followers down. Like, just kidding, there's no baby. And I say that tritely, but I don't mean it tritely. I was so embarrassed and ashamed of failing. I felt like I failed in pregnancy, which is not the case. 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in miscarriage. It is so common. And I don't think people realize how miraculous it is for a baby to be born. Like, many, many pregnancies end in miscarriage or infant loss.
It's sad. You there's so many, and yet at the time it feels so unique.
Isolating was the way. Lonely.
Telling myself, like, teenagers are able to do this, and you're a grown woman and you haven't managed it. I used some awful things to myself. I was really horrible in how I treated myself. It wasn't until years later, when I had my little girl, that I was able to look back with some compassion on the poor woman that was me that went through that, and how awful I'd been to her.
Yeah. So that was a huge deal for me. And I learned a lot from that experience. Honestly, so I wrote the book, and then I shied away from telling people about the book because I didn't want to talk about it. I was proud of the story. I had tons of reviews and people on Amazon saying, "Oh my gosh, thank you for this book. It feels like a friend in my infant loss." But I also had close friends sending me links about terrible stories about miscarriage and infant loss, like horrific stories. Like, I would be interested in reading them. And I was still processing my own grief. So I really didn't want that identity of being the miscarriage woman, because like it was depressing. And I didn't want to tell people I was an author, because the next question is, "Oh, what's the book that you wrote?" "Oh, I wrote a book about miscarriage." And the whole conversation just plummets, and like, no one wants to talk. Oh, you wrote a book about miscarriage. Okay. Like, you just end the conversation with that. So I avoided my call to like step into that grief and step into that ministry for a long time because of that.
Yeah. And it's hard, isn't it, to become solely looked at that one area, because there's so much more to who you are and what you bring to the world. I mean, it's it's one of just over 30 books that you've contributed towards. And that's not to dismiss what it is, because it's amazing and such an invaluable resource for when you're going through something like that and you do feel so alone and so unable to. But what moved you into owning that authorship and making it part of how you serve?
It helped a lot that I was able to write more books. So the next book series I wrote after that was a co-authored devotional series, an adventure devotional series. So I was able, when people ask me what book I wrote, sometimes I was able to say adventure devos. I wrote this book of these stories about adventure, and we tie it back to the Bible. And it was nice to not have to be the miscarriage person all the time. But then it gave me permission to be the miscarriage person when I needed to be. When I came across a woman who was struggling with her own grief, I understood what she was going through. I was able to say, hey, I get it. I've been there. You're not alone. And so that became a powerful ministry tool, but it wasn't my only identity. And that felt really good. I actually had a woman recommend my own book to me when she heard I had a miscarriage. She's like, oh my gosh, I just read this amazing book called Love Letters to Miscarriage Moms. I was like, I've read it a couple times.
Did you ever tell her you wrote it?
I did. I was like, actually, yeah, that was really funny. It was one of my daughter's teachers. So it was really sweet.
But amazing to be able to see that the impact that you'd had actually being passed on, albeit all the way back round to you.
Yeah, it was one of the greatest compliments I think an author can receive, to have their own book recommended to them. So
absolutely. I mean, that's amazing. So what are you working? What's been your latest book? What are you working on now?
That one's a doozy. That one, my late husband, that's the start of the sentence. My late husband died in 2019, and he had a cancer diagnosis that we found through a drunk driving accident. So in 2017, he got in a drunk driving accident. He was a pastor, so it was a scandalous front page news situation.
I think we might have lost you.
And I'm hoping you got that, because we were buffered there for a second. So I'm just going to repeat it in case it faded out. He said, Sam, what are the chances that I'd be married to an author whose best work comes from wounds? I want you to interview me, and I want you to write my story.
Wow.
So I interviewed him. I have 6 hours of audio, and it took me 7 years to write this book. I compare it a lot to Harry Potter and a Horcrux. And the fact that it required piece of my soul I put a piece of my soul in that book. And so 7 years, it took a lot out of me, like I said, and it finally came out January 1st, The Prodigal Son, Crackhead to Jesus Freak. And it's about his struggle of being bullied, becoming the bully, using alcohol, abusing alcohol, becoming an addict, becoming a crack addict, and then his whole transformation that, like, God, he used to say God knocked him upside the head with a 2x4. So his whole transformation of that, and then getting his associates, his bachelor's, his master of divinity, becoming a pastor, and then relapsing. That's the crazy story. So that came out January 1st.
Wow. I mean,
there it is.
Yeah. I can't begin to imagine all the emotions you must have gone through in helping to, in interviewing you when at that point, and everything else that you must have been going through as a family, but then also bringing that book, that journey to life with such compassion, having lost it as well. That must have been.
It was really hard. Love Letters to Miscarriage Moms was cathartic to write. It helped me heal. The Prodigal Son was not cathartic. It was It was really hard. But it's my story, and it's Clint's story, and it's told from my point of view and his point of view. So you have the addict's perspective and the addict spouse perspective. And you can see that struggle, which is real for a lot of people. Unfortunately, there are a lot of spouses who know what it's like to have blue and red lights rotating in their windows, or to have to see their spouse handcuffed, to have to call the police on their spouse or the paramedics for their spouse. A lot of people are dealing with those things. So to be able to bring it to light in the same manner that I did with the miscarriages, talking about the gross and the ugly things that a lot of people don't want to talk about, in doing that, I'm able to help other people understand that they're not alone in these dark moments that they're facing.
Amazing. And that's such a gift to the world that you're sharing your lived experience to help other people to make sense of their lived experience. Because again, I would imagine it's another topic that people tend not to share. Would that be fair?
100%. No one wants to talk about their addiction issues because it's very shameful. It's very dirty and dark and embarrassing. And I would even venture to say that it's more embarrassing than the embarrassment you and I experienced with our miscarriage, infant loss, because we didn't choose to miscarry our babies. It happened to us. And there's this element of, I did this to myself with addiction.
Yeah, that's so true. Because as you say, with a miscarriage, although at the time you do think it's your fault, you can realize over time that actually that's just not true. Whereas with addiction, there is, I guess, more of a stigma as well, that you should have done something different. You should have made a better choice. It's one of those where should comes in. People have got a real opinion on what you should have done. It's like, well, you don't know what it was like, because it's as an output to something else, isn't it? Something else that's going on that you're trying to distance yourself from, maybe.
A lot of times, that's why people start using, is to get away from a hard life or hard memories. People drink for that reason. What I've learned about addiction is that the drug of choice, which could be alcohol, could be anything, chooses the addict. Before I met my late husband, I was very judgmental of addicts. Like, well, if he just stopped spending his money on drugs and went to school, he could have a better life. She should blah, 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 like clean up her life and spend more time with her kids. What I've learned is that the addiction and the drug takes over the thought process for the addict. They no longer think for themselves. They no longer choose for themselves. The drug chooses for them. They become a husk that is trying to get high. And the high, we need oxygen to breathe. For an addict, they need that high to breathe. It becomes so crucial for them to get high because they physically need it. And so that's why when you hear about people trying to get clean and sober up, and they go through those heavy withdrawal symptoms of shaking and sweating, and sometimes it can be life endangering to try to do that on your own, because it's incredibly dangerous because your whole body becomes dependent on the drug. So then you can't just quit cold turkey. It actually becomes physically dangerous to do so.
Wow. That must be really hard to watch the person that you love go through that and not be able to get them to stop. But
you can't do anything about it. I wrote prayers against addiction for families or friends that have someone who's addicted and they want to pray for them. And there are a lot of prayer books out there for addicts, praying for your prodigal, and they pray for peace and hope and guidance. Those are not bad. Prayers against addiction, I subtitled it, Praying for Your Addict Where the Needle Pierces Skin. I wanted it to be prayers for the addict in the moments that the addicts face. And my late husband was not the only addict I interviewed for another job. Those contributions to those books, a lot of those were chapters I wrote that were testimonies of addicts. So I was interviewing an addict and then writing his or her story from first person. So I've gotten a lot of perspective from different addicts and things that they face and they go through. So Prayers Against Addiction, I invited several addicts to write with me. And yeah, those are the books that I contributed to. A lot of them have stories about addiction in there. And some of them are out of print at this point, but it helped me to grow as an author and to understand Clint's story too, because then when he was telling me things, I wasn't hearing it for the first time. When he was talking to me about withdrawal, I had heard that from other people by then. And so this prayer book, I invited a former heroin addict to write it with me, a former alcoholic, the child of an addict. I wrote some prayers as the spouse of an addict. And then there's one more man who had addiction in his family. So these prayers are written by people who've experienced infant loss. I don't know why Amazon won't put a silly icon on there, but that is the book. The image is a man, it's black and white, and it's a man praying, like sitting and kneeling with his hands against his forehead. So Prayers Against Addiction, the left side of the page is, it's backwards with the camera. The left side of the page is the prayer that we write and the Bible verse and the theme, when an addict burns bridges, when an addict is trying to get sober, when an addict has suicidal thoughts, those type of things. And we pray in these specific themes. And then beside it, there are lines for the person who purchased the book to write a specific prayer for their own addict, for their own prodigal that they're praying for. And then there's space at the bottom that says evidence of the answer. Like, we forget a lot of times that God can answer those prayers. And so you want to write the evidence of the answer so that you can remain hopeful in your addict's journey.
Wow. I mean, that's just beautiful and so inclusive, because I think one of the things that strikes me about your book is that you're inviting people to use them to make sense of their own journey and still their own journey, whether they're the spouse of somebody, or whether they're the addict, whether they're a family member, but we're giving them that opportunity to learn from it and then make it their own is so empowering. That's one of the things I would imagine. I've not been in that situation. One of the things I would imagine if I had a loved one with an addiction, or if I had an addiction, is that loss of power, that loss of hope almost in the moment. It feels like that would be a very strong emotion. Would that be fair?
Yeah. And then part of the journal was because of what I've learned from grief. Sometimes we are grieving so acutely that we don't have those words ourselves. So sometimes we need to just read something that someone else says, or we just need to know that someone else is going through it. So having those prayers there from other former addicts helps us to understand, okay, we're not alone. These people have overcome addiction and they're with me. They're in this with me. They've been there. And so that's really encouraging. And then there are other times in grief where you have so many thoughts in your head that if you don't get them out, you're going to go crazy. So that's where the blank pages come in with the lines, and you can write your own prayer and work out your own thoughts for the prodigal that you're praying for.
Amazing. It's so well thought out as a concept and as a book, to allow people to work through whatever stage they're at in that grief. Because as you say, in those moments, we have lots of thoughts, but we can't necessarily turn them into something that's tangible. But when you read somebody else's, you go, yeah, that's it. That's what I mean. That's what.
Yes. Well, and I wrote Until the Day We Meet Again, a miscarriage journal, which isn't specifically for miscarriage, but again, I thought through it as a griever. Like, you and I have both experienced the grief of miscarriage. When I have opened journals and there is a prompt at the top that says, okay, write about this, right? And then you have 3 specific pages or 2 specific pages to write about that prompt. Well, what if I don't feel like writing about that prompt? Or what if I have 6 pages to write about with that prompt? You run out of room. So one of the things I did with my journal was I just listed all the prompts at the beginning of the book. I am 25 things I'm grateful for. I am struggling with my infant loss today because I am jealous of this family today because things that I need to, like questions I have about infant loss that I can ask someone else, indicators that I might need a counselor. So there are all sorts of different prompts. And then there's a journal, and you just write an index for yourself. This is the journal prompt, the date, the page number. And then if you flip through the journal, it just says prompt and date at the top. So you can write your own prompt and your own date, and you can write as many pages as you need to write for as long as you need to write. And then you don't need to write about the thing that the book is telling you to write about. You're writing your own story. You're working through it the way that you need to in the time that you need to. So that I was actually really proud of that story structure, that journal structure.
Yeah, that's really often journals are too, for me, they're too prescriptive. I'm like, but that's not where my brain's going today, or where it's heading to. So they're useful because they give you some of those prompts that get you thinking. But like you say, then grief doesn't just flow away, does it? You don't go, oh, good, I've gone past denial, big tick off we trot.
April 30th, check.
We kind of get through it, then we can come all the way back, and something can knock us in any moment, can't it? To a different place in understanding that something maybe we've not processed properly yet, or something that we haven't fully thought through to be able to work on it. I remember for me watching it's a sitcom that was very popular when I was growing up, and they talked about miscarriage in it, and it was just after I'd had my little girl, so I had now a child, and that particular episode came up, and it just threw me. I was like completely in tears, and people didn't understand because they were like, "But you've got a child now," and I was like,
"So that fixes everything."
But I feel his pain. I know what it's like to be in his shoes, and that just it takes you right back, doesn't it? So I think having it written the way you have, which allows people to own their own journey through it, but giving holding their hand whilst they're doing it. It's like, here's some things that worked for me, but you do your journey your way.
Right, exactly. One of the prompts is actually dumb things that people have said to me, or hurtful things that people have said to me, because a lot of people said stupid things like, well, you already have a baby, so why are you still sad about your miscarriage? Yeah. That is not correct.
Yeah.
So, and then the cover of the journal says journal by, and there's just a colon there for the person who receives the journal to write their name on the cover of the book. And then it says with S.E. Schritter on the bottom. So you're writing the journal, you're the author of the journal with S.E. Schritter, meaning I gave you the prompts and it's your turn. I already wrote a book about miscarriage. I didn't need to write another one. Now it's your turn. So.
But I think even in the way you've done that, it gives that sense of it's your journey, it's you that's going to write it, but actually I'm here with you and I understand what it's like to have written the journal you're about to write, even though yours is going to be different because it's your journey, it's your experience, it's how you're feeling your way through what's happened to you. But it's that reminder that there's hope and there's a way through, and there's people that have gone through it and survived. Because I think that's when we're in those moments of grief and we're in those moments of loss, what we really want is to be heard, and we also want hope, because it can feel so hopeless, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I wanted to share with people. I don't consider myself an expert, like a grief expert, which maybe I am, but I don't consider myself a grief expert. I consider myself an expert griever. And so I've been through it. I know what it feels like. And I know that everyone's grief is individual and different. And I know that we all have similar pain when we're grieving. So being able to lend hope of, I've been through it. I made it to the other side. And a lot of times when I'll sign the inside of a journal like that, like Until the Day We Meet Again or Love Letters to Miscarriage Moms, I'll say things like, I want you to know that the pain gets easier. I've been there. Hang in there. You're going to be okay. Because people need that hope. They need to know that even though it's incredibly painful and dark, there's hope and there's light on the other side of it.
That's how because it's the thing that we need in those is that hope to keep going, that hope to take the next step, whether that's somebody with grieving of a miscarriage or loss, or whether that's somebody we're grieving in life in general. You mentioned about having previously lost grandparents, your husband. There's so many moments in life where grief comes in to our life, and
Right.
each one is different. Every time it's in a different way, and I think often that's the thing that surprises you. Is, well, hold on, I thought I knew grief because I've lost people and I grieve for them, but this is different. And then the next time, sometimes the hits just keep coming, and it's knowing that actually that's okay, and there is a way beyond that. And I think the whole series that you're doing helps bring that to life, and I love that. The definition of not being an expert on grief, but being an expert griever, is amazing, because that is, you're doing it from a sense of having been there, having been in it, and coming through, and having to keep going back through it. But if we look at your journey, having then lost your husband, and that it's that ongoing piece that says it gets easier. But there is always a chance that there's going to be more coming of a different kind, because we can't live a life without grief, because that would mean we live a life without love.
Correct. Right. And it's sad for me because I know there are people that stay in their grief for whatever reason. They cannot move forward out of grief. And that breaks my heart. Grief is hard. Grief is hard to overcome. I feel like I had to intentionally take steps to overcome the loss. One of those steps was allowing myself to be sad, allowing myself to feel those feelings, and then another thing was coming up with the thoughts of grief and, okay, what do I need to work on today? What do I need to do to feel successful today? And sometimes it was as simple as showering. Like after my late husband died, I felt I had lived a successful day if I had showered or remembered to brush my teeth. So it takes intentionality in order to overcome that grief. And my heart just breaks for people who remain stuck there. Like, please, please, please try to see the joy and the hope in life, because life is hard. Life is really hard. And unfortunately, death is part of life. And I think that surprises some people more than others.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think it is. It's kind of, even though we know it's coming. I wrote a book for my little girl, actually, to help. She was at the time that we lost my dad, her granddad, and trying to help a little one come to terms with what it means, and the fact that love never really leaves us. It just changes shape, because we can still get back to the people when we think about, what would they say to me right now? What would what were those memories that we've got, so that you can realize that it's not the end. It's just a different space right now. But I personally found it quite therapeutic being able to manage it through in a way that is, how do you deal with those emotions when they hit? And they do hit, and and being able to still think about the person, because very often we stop, don't we? People don't. I remember my friend lost her mum many years ago, and her partner at the time said to me, she cries every day and she cries because of you. And I was devastated, because, oh my goodness, I didn't mean to make it worse. And when I talked to her about it, she was like, you're the only person that reminds me of things that she did whenever you talk to me, it'll be something else. That poor woman, bless her, would have the patience of a saint. I mean, we used to drive her mad, I'm sure. And she would remain like so calm throughout it all. And I would remind my friend of things that reminded me of her mum, that would make me smile. That would be, do you remember when no matter how much noise we made, she would just calmly carry on making dinner and ignore us, shout at us, and just say something like, and she said, actually, I cried because you brought her back to me every day, because people didn't. They stopped talking about it. Just don't mention in case that sets somebody off. And actually, that can be a really hard part of grief as well, can't it? That you can't talk about it.
Yeah. So I went to this health and wellness expo yesterday. I had a table there, and it was for our Simpsonville Chamber of Commerce. I went up to get coffee, and the woman in charge, the director of the Simpsonville Chamber of Commerce, said, this woman just came up to me and she was in tears. And she said, "Oh my gosh, this expo was so amazing. It was so healing. Thank you so much." And the director looked at me and she's like, "Is that your fault?" And I was like, "Yes." Yes, it is. I have made several people cry today. Thank you very much. And I don't know. They came up to my booth and they were talking to me, and they told me they were widows. I met like 4 widows yesterday, I think, and I was able to say, this is the story of my late husband, and I showed them the prodigal son, and it brought them to tears. But then this one woman, she was working out, and she talked about how she was trying to work out to try to stay healthy after her husband's death. And I said, I did the same thing. And can I tell you a funny story? And she said, yes. And she had this weird look on her face, like, how are you going to tell me a funny story about being a widow and working out? But you have to be able to laugh. And like you said with your friend, enjoy the moments that were good, right? You have to be able to do that, because laughter and joy are part of the healing process. And so I said, well, I used to miss my husband a lot, like I couldn't breathe. And I took this Zumba class, like dancing to Latin music, and I felt really uncoordinated every time I took the Zumba class. But one day I pictured my late husband and Jesus dancing in Zumba with me. They were laughing like idiots, and they had no idea what they were doing, but all 3 of us were in there dancing together, and it was hilarious. And then after that, I started looking forward to Zumba. So Zumba helped me heal, because I had this hilarious image in my head every time I went to the class.
Oh, Sam, I love that. Oh, that's such a great story, because I always say to my little girls, sometimes you've just got to embrace our inner weirdo and that dance like nobody's watching.
100%.
Those moments kind of they remind you that joy is allowed still, that it's not to be unjoyous always, and bringing them into it now gives you a place to go and spend time with them, because you've got that image. I'm sure every time you go and do something, you've got that moment that goes, this brings me joy, this feeds my soul, because actually it's a positive space to be.
Yeah, and my late husband used to dress so terribly. Like, he would wear orange and blue together, or red and yellow. Like, he was such a terrible dresser. So I was able to picture him with like this neon yellow sleeveless shirt with red shorts, red basketball shorts, and he had a stupid look on it. It was perfect. It was really great.
Sam, I love it. I could literally chat to you all day. We've only just scratched the surface. But I'm conscious that we're coming to the end of time, and we go straight into a different show. So could you share with us how people can get in touch with you and who you like to hear from?
100%. So my website is really easy to find. It is loveunedited.com. And right at the top there's a button that says Let's Connect. So if you click on that, you'll see what Kim is showing you right now. You can go look at the books. That's Prayers Against Addiction right there. And The Prodigal Son. I think you'll also, if you scroll down on my books page, you can also see, I don't know if it's there. Yeah, keep right there on the right, Until the Day We Meet Again, to the right of my elbow. That's the miscarriage journal. And so you can connect with my books that way. I would love to connect with you on TikTok or X or Instagram, YouTube. I'm on all the things. So I would love to see you guys there. That would be really great.
Wow, amazing. Sam, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you so very much for coming on and sharing your journey, sharing your lived experience, and sharing your love for helping other people when they're in tough times. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim.
And to everybody listening and watching, I hope you found today's episode to be as thought-provoking, insightful, and calming as I did. And until next time, take care.
My Tummy Hurts by Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Meet Jackie. She loves recess, running with friends, and laughing on the playground. At school, Jackie tries to play like she always does, but suddenly the pain comes back. Lately, something feels different and her tummy hurts, sometimes a little and sometimes a lot. With the help of a caring teacher, a nurse, her mom, and a kind doctor, Jackie begins to understand what her body is trying to tell her. Sometimes tummy pain is more than a simple bellyache. Some children live with conditions like ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. Jackie listens to her body. She asks for help. She knows she's not alone. And Jackie finds her way back to running, laughing, and being herself. My Tummy Hurts, a kid's guide to bellyaches and bathroom troubles by Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, available on Amazon and in fine bookstores around the world. USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Tracy Cram Perkins, a dementia caregiving survivor teaching how to balance care with peace of mind. #1 resource for dementia caregivers. It's the book Dementia Home Care: How to Prepare Before, During, and After. Over 17,000 copies sold of this must-have guide. And now a testimonial from Tracy Smith.
If I was to describe this book to someone who is going through a similar situation, I would underscore how important it is to have some sort of a tool or a guidebook to help you through certain stages. And there's so many, it's such an unknown topic to the average person. And to have this as a reference is essential. It's going to help you get through it personally, as well as help your loved one manage.
To learn more, go to TracyCramPerkins.com. Tracy Cram Perkins is an award-winning author. She's also the host of Dementia Home Care television show. Watch it here on USA Global TV and Radio.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.